So from the start of the year, as we all became increasingly aware of the impact of the chip shortage to vehicle production and the effect this would have on PGM metal demand, that is heavily dependent on the automotive sector, we rushed to familiarize ourselves with the intricacies of the semiconductor sector. And the key takeouts for me was well summarized by a Ford executive who recently participated in a EV panel. And he explained that, firstly, the automotive sector has a small share of chip demand. This means that they have lower purchasing power. During the height of the pandemic, in a rush towards cash conservation, supply chain orders were ratcheted back dramatically. And effectively, that means that car companies gave up their place in the queue. Automotive chips are fairly simple chips at low price points compared to the more exotic and higher priced 5G type chips. So there was also very little incentive when demand pull from consumers came back so dramatically and so quickly. Very little incentive to give the auto sector any fast passes to get ahead of the queue. And to add fuel to fire, and this is literally, a few natural and man-made disasters saw some capacity taken out. In February, a fierce winter storm closed computer chip facilities in Texas, amid global chip crisis, and in March, Renesas Electronics reported that a fire in the automotive chip production plant in Ibaraki Prefecture severely curtailed production capability for the rest of the year.
We already know when it comes to the likes of palladium and rhodium, electrification of fleets essentially is going to severely impact overall demand for them going forward, especially kind of taking off after 2030. Now, I'm certainly not an analyst. I don't do forecasts or anything like that. But we do have some people at Bloomberg who do, and they kind of confirm this, that by 2050, which is obviously this quite significant benchmark date for reaching net zero, there is very, very severe demand destruction for both palladium and rhodium. The wild card, right, is platinum, and this kind of comes from my conversations with a lot of people, in various different sectors of the industry. There is a very kind of big question basically that needs answering, and we don't really have the ability to do it yet, which is, will the hydrogen economy eventually actually compensate for the demand destruction that we're almost inevitably going to see for platinum coming from internal combustion engines?
So if we look at South African PGM volumes since the beginning of last year, the second quarter of last year was hit quite hard because of the restrictions that were imposed by government at some time when we had a hard lockdown. Underground mining was not possible, and then that was gradually loosened as we went forward. But also the measures that then came in place allowed for higher operating rates in the subsequent waves. So in second quarter last year, the operating rates fell to close to 50%, but in the first quarter of this year, during the second wave, we saw that they managed to operate at about 90%, and most recently in the third quarter, we saw that the PGM miners managed to operate above 95% of their production. So those measures that they are putting in place are allowing them to operate at higher rates, allowing more volumes to come out of South Africa, even at the peak of the third wave. So if we now want to look at the relationship between the mined and the refined volumes that are coming in South Africa, as we have seen some impact on the mined volumes last year as well as this year, but with the refined volumes last year, they were even lower than the mined volumes, mostly because of challenges at Anglo America Platinum. There are challenges with their converter units, their main and the backup unit. It had multiple breakdowns last year. They only managed to bring the main plant back online towards the end of the year, around in November. So as a result, they processed less ore than they had mined. So they accumulated some work in progress inventories of about 1 million, and those inventories they expect to mine them, to refine them over 2021 and 2022. So if you look at the guidance that they've given to the market, you'll see that for this year and next year, the refined output will be significantly higher than the mined production because of the high number of work in progress inventories that they still need to work through.
The PGM sources, basically geographical sources, are from South Africa, and the balance is from Zimbabwe, Canada, and the United States, including Russia. The refining and recycling of these metals are done by the PGM refineries, which we happen to have only 3 major refiners in the world who own their mining operation and the smelting operations. We have seen throughout the year the recycling seems to continue on largely uninterrupted. Looking at the production level and the supply by each region, South Africa still holds the highest level for the platinum, palladium, and rhodium are same for Russia and South Africa, where rhodium is again a dominant factor, where South Africa has plus 80% market. So on the region basis, it is very much into the South African hands when it comes to all the 3 PGMs.
As we look at the progression from learning how to scrub the heat off, learning how to increase the power, the only real 2 issues are going to be, as we're closing here, we're looking at that membrane, that PEM, the proton exchange membrane. As we're looking at that membrane, we realize, as it was pointed out in the second dissertation here, it uses a lot of platinum, 30 to 60 grams. Your average is usually anywhere from 2 to 5 grams. So we're going to have a very large drawdown as this progresses. But with nanotechnology, I think it's my belief that we're going to see the amount of usage of platinum come down, and the capacity to compress hydrogen so that we'll need smaller fuel tanks to drive these fuel cells. And as I've been watching, and I want to bring, as we're closing here, I want to talk about practicality, as we've seen the questions as we're looking for the silver bullet and why it's going to impact the platinum palladium, which has been pointed out very well in here, that we're seeing real technology being used. So this isn't a dream. This is going to happen.
In surplus for this year. We saw it at 180 at the start of the year. We see it going to just short of 500,000. If the chip shortage continues, we'll see it come down if indeed the recovery is stronger. You know, and with palladium, it is a metal in structural deficit. And it has been, you know, we called it a 1 million ounce deficit in the middle of the year. Now it's closer to 300,000. You know, if the chip shortage is worse, it'll move closer to balance. If the chip shortage is, you know, kind of recovers in Q4, Q1, then we certainly will see that metal shift back into a deeper deficit.